Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today we're going to talk about building Nagash. I've already done it. I needed to do it in a hurry, which is actually kind of laughable considering that he is fairly beefy, and there are some parts that require some pretty serious patience. I built him off camera because I needed him for Beast Feast, and I didn't really know how long it was going to take. And so here we are with the instructions, and I thought I'd go over them and just chat about them a little bit. If you have any thoughts or questions, you're more than welcome to ask, and I'll see what I can do. We'll first talk about the instructions, and then I'll show the model as well. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, let's dive right in. So you actually have two variants for Nagash. You can do it with his weird staff thing, or he can be holding his sword. I ended up going with the staff. He's wearing the sword anyway. It's kind of cool because if you have the sword out, then the sheath in the back is empty. I thought that was kind of neat. Pretty cool all around. He's not crazy hard, but he does require some patience, especially when it comes to holding things for the glue. So let's start by talking about the main assembly. As you can see, you've got a pretty hefty part of his body here that is in one big mold. You can put the top part of his chest on, and then there's these little random pieces. I have no idea why that exists and why they didn't just mold it on. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but there it is. And the same's with this one. It's like, why not just mold that in place? And same over here, the number 6, which is also basically this number 5. Should have been part of it. It wasn't, so you got to account for it. It's kind of tiny, so take your time with that. The leg piece here to create this bent knee actually lines up very well, and it has a nice connection that makes perfect sense. So this part won't be a big deal. Once you've got it in place, you slide in his little knee pad, his little foot, and then you've got a leg. The leg then attaches to the main assembly. You've got the foot here that goes in. This was very easy. All of this stuff, this whole part, done in minutes. In fact, the whole first page is pretty simple. Now, after you finish this part, this is where I would say you should pause and maybe paint it. Do a sub-assembly painting. Now, the reason for that is that as you move into this next part, you see we're going to build his head. And his head basically has the top, you put his little crown on, and then you put this part on that has these tassel things that come off. And when it's done, those tassels are going to be in front of your chest piece, which just makes it a little bit harder to paint underneath it. So if you do sub-assembly painting, stop here, paint what you got, put his head together, put that on, or maybe even paint it too. I don't know. This one is so easy, it doesn't really take much conversation. You do have a little belt piece that are his skulls that you can throw on. And then we move on to page 2. So in page 2, this is where we start to get into some of the stuff that I always don't like as much because it tends to be fairly spindly. This is like the worst aspects of the night haunts brought together. So we have to basically attach his cloak to the spectral parts, and then the spectral part comes in and attaches to another part, and so on and so forth. Basically, the good news is that each of these connection points are super obvious, and they've done a good job of giving you a fair amount of plastic for it to really adhere to. I would say that it is actually fairly sturdy, even though when I show you the model, you're going to see that there are some parts that could be considered, shall we say, floppy. So once we get that on there, and we've done all of this stuff, which is basically putting a book on and putting the books together, we're then going to put this right onto his butt. And putting it on his butt was no big deal. It actually has plenty of room. I did have to hold it for a while to make sure it stayed because this is a very large piece. And at this point, there's not really much to do with your model other than to try and put him onto one of these little guys to keep him under control until you're ready to do the next part. So once you've done that, you have to take this part and put it on. Now, this is where we start to get into the points where you need to be patient because this connection point over, my apologies, this is the part where we've got to actually pay close attention and be patient because this connection point over here on this part connecting to this likes to slide. when it gets the glue on it. So you kind of need to take your time and just hold it and make sure it doesn't flop out of place so that you get a nice seam in there. After that, we're still building books, doing this kind of thing. You can see here that forming this part came from here. Another freaking book, more spectral stuff, which is going to make up the base. So by the time we're done with this page, we have everything that's going to go onto the base. But once we get here, we still have some more just random stuff that's going to connect up to the last part of the cloak. Now, this is actually the one that I had the hardest time keeping tight to his cloak. It may be different for you, but for me, getting this contact point attached to that just took a while. And I'm happy with the result. You'll see it in a moment, but it was very interesting. They try to do an okay job of showing you where stuff goes, but I just don't really feel like they did. I mean, when you're looking at some of these, it's like, what does that even mean? So it like shows you that the book should go right here. I mean, it just basically barely connects by the bottom there. So it's very interesting. Once we've got it, we've now got the full cloak part for his little skirt done. And then we can move on. Now, this is where we start working on the actual ghosts. Now, these ghosts, if you've ever worked with any of these things like this, are kind of a pain in the butt. They aren't the most intuitive pieces of work to work on. These remind me of the spirit hosts. Those were probably the hardest models I've ever done. And these guys are close to the same level of just annoying. Like, for instance, this connection point here to there, yeah, I mean, I got it, kinda, but it isn't. This does not do it justice. Fortunately, that's the only one that was a real pain. The double-headed guy was very easy. So once you've built these spirit dudes, this one is also kind of a pain, even though they did a fairly decent job of showing you where it should go. It didn't really make a lot of sense. You just end up having to kind of go on blind faith. That's never necessarily good. So after that, we start working on the arms. The arms are much like the legs. They connect up very well. You can see that this connection point is going to be a little insert, and it works great. And then you cover it with a elbow pad. Then you build the sword for this variant. You put the sword into the sheath, and then you've got a top part that goes there. Then you start connecting it all together. Now, I'm going to tell you, the cool thing about this sheath is that it has a little divot. This sheath here has a divot underneath it, and that connects up to a slot on his back so that you know exactly where it goes. However, I'm going to tell you this. Once I got that sword on, I did have to leave him alone for like 4 hours for that to dry enough to where it wasn't flopping around. Because before it dried, it was fairly pointless to try and manipulate the model. It was just doing this all over the place. This is kind of in the same boat. You want this to dry. This is his little bone loincloth. And once that's on there, you're pretty much good to go. The arm has a connection point inside of it so that when you put it in there, it actually connects to a little hole. And while I won't say that there's only one way it can go, it does slot in there pretty well. It actually clicks into place almost like it's a push together model. So that's something to keep in mind. I would almost say that it would be very easy to magnetize these arms so that you could have both weapons if you were so inclined. Next, we build the staff. The staff is very simple. You just put this on here. Fortunately, this skeletal section here connects up to another skeletal section, and it's a fairly good connection point. So it's going to stay there and be firm. You're building the hand here, which is utterly ridiculous. I don't know why they did it that way, but they did. Then we connect it to the arm. And once again, once I did this, I had to leave the model for a while so that this could dry. So this I put off to the side, and then I continued on, adding other things, doing what I could, which basically came down to building the shoulder pads. They're each in 2 different parts. So you push them together, you let them dry, and then they actually have a pretty reasonable connection point near the top that coincides with his shoulders. So you shouldn't have any trouble mixing that up there. And at this point, they want you to start putting on the ghosts. Now, it does show that this one should glue to the staff, and I'll show you why that's probably an important thing once I show you the actual ghost, because that's the wobbly bit. I haven't done it yet, but I could. and you'll see. Again, this is very nice because it has a very large connection point so that it will take to the glue and stay there pretty firmly. Finally, we're going to build his book, which goes in his hand. This thing is really cool. It basically has an open book. You put some pages in, and then you put the page with the ghost coming out, and then you got the book. That goes onto his arm. There is, though it doesn't show it, a nice divot on the back of this that connects up to his wrist so that you know exactly where it's going to go. Again, all along the way, subassembly painting would probably be advised because it'd be easier to paint his arm without this book there, and it'd be easier to paint the book without having to get around his arm too. So something to keep in mind if that's something you're inclined to do. Otherwise, you can just be inconvenienced the way I was. Finally, we built his backpack. Now, his backpack is ridiculous. It basically has this bone part, and then all of these little parts go onto it. I was able to put 3 on. I had to let them dry, and then I can put the other 3 on. I actually have not put that on him yet. So I'm not sure if I'm going to either. It's kind of cool, but at the same time, I'm like, meh, I don't necessarily care. He looks cool without it too. So once that's done, you can then put him on his base. And I even had to hold it for that for a while. So on the base was kind of painful. And then we are off to the races for the alternate version, which pretty much the primary difference is that the sword doesn't go into the sheath. You get an extra book, and then he's holding this crazy sword instead of the other thing. I guess he's also got magic in his other hand. Let's see. Yeah, so he's got crazy magic in this hand. But by and large, if you've looked through the other part, it's not that crazy different. I kind of wish I would have done this one, but I really loved that book. I love the ghost coming out of it. So anyway, that is the building instructions for Nagash. It's kind of interesting how they did the page color here. I did not do it this way. But let me show you the model right now, and I will talk through some things here. Now, this model I have completely finished because he is my entry. Now, this model I've completely finished because he's my entry for Beast Feast. So I had to get him painted and everything as quickly as possible. But here he is, and I like him a lot. You can see that on this side here, there's that seam I was talking about. Maybe you can see. Let me try and get it in there. There we go. Seam. This seam here is the one that I had to hold for a long time to make sure that it stayed nice and smooth and tight. Same with the other side. This one actually came out a little better, I think. But it's not too bad. There's his sheath. It's really on there if you let it dry. Here are the ghosts. Now, I'm going to put it down and show you that when you... There you go. This one really flops. So that's why they would like you to basically touch him to the staff and glue him down. There's an alternative I found. I could sort of link him around the staff to keep it from flopping too much. There we go. That one right there. Or I could do that. And now, no more real flopping. And I didn't have to glue it. So, ultimately, there are some things that I sort of decided were just good enough. The books, they kind of wanted you to make them more bony. I went for more of a flesh tone. And there's just so many of them. I got a little bit tired of painting them. I do like this book. I did make it sort of a flesh color and tried to paint up the stitches. But I'd really like to see if I can get you a look. Yeah, there we go. There's how I did the book. So it actually looks like it's a real book and that there's a blue ghost coming out of it. I thought that'd be kind of fun. Other than that, I think he's all around pretty neat. Let me just briefly discuss some of the techniques I used. So I wanted his armor to be metallic purple. And the way I did that was I painted it lead belcher, and then I used Luxian purple as a contrast paint over it once it dried. And that got me the color. As far as the bone texture, I primed him with wraith bone And then I just went through with Skeletal Horde and then Agrax Earthshade to do that part. The staff is Retributor Gold, Lead Belcher, and Blood Angels contrast paint. And then I used Null Oil on that. The staff is pretty much just the Skeletal Horde, and then I used Agrax on that. And then for the ghosts themselves, I used the Briar Queen Chill contrast paint. His cloak here is AQ by Darkness, and then I sort of melded it into the other color. I could have probably gotten more detailed on the books, but I like them. I think they're fine. And I think he looks really, really cool. For a 3-day project, I'm pretty happy with him all around. I think he's really neat. One of the things I really love about the scabbard is that I did the brown, but then I colored in the stitching black to make it stand out a little bit more. As far as the hilt goes, the handle, I did one of the black contrast paints to get that color. So anyway, that is my Nagash. Oh, let me talk about these tassels really quick. So I managed to do a pretty good job of getting everything underneath it. I made these magenta first, and then I went back through with Voluptus pink and got that color in there. So all around, I don't know. Like I said, I'm pretty happy with him. I think he's a really fun model, and I do not think you would go amiss in trying to build him. I think you'd both have a good time and learn a few things. But again, if you have any questions, if you're building Nagash and you're like, what the heck am I doing in this part? Please let me know in the comments, and I will see what I can do to help you out. Having spent basically 3 days building him, I do have at least a passing memory of all of the different parts, especially the harder ones. As you can see, his backpack should go right up here, but I kind of like seeing his purple armor. So, I don't know. I have a few days to decide if I'm going to try and cram this on here somehow. See, I don't even think it really fits very well myself, but maybe that's just me. And maybe it goes like that. I don't know. Anyway, let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon. This is Robert with Society Case Files, signing off.